Oh, hello, I didn't see you there. It seems that you've caught me playing with Diceself. Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, or whatever time zone it is wherever you are in the world, and welcome to episode 2 of season 1 of the Playing With Diceself podcast, where we're looking at the Autarkis Storyteller homebrew, which is of my creation, so we can play Vampire the Masquerade 5th Edition solo style. Last time we were introduced properly to our Nosferatu Doris Stone, who attended Elysium, which is in a jailhouse belonging or pertaining to Prince Jonathan of Clan Nosferatu, and we spoke to a Nosferatu called Bryan, and we're slowly making our way to inducting him into the cult of Yima, or the Cleopatrians of Yima, as they're so called in Cult to the Blood Gods. Spank the books for good luck. And now we're about to start Elysium proper with Prince Jonathan raising from his seat this, I imagine, is a really crappy fold-up metal chair on some sort of crappy elevated pedestal platform of some description, where he's going to tell us the events of Elysium, why we're actually here. And we determined in the previous session it was because he was going to tell us that the Anarch population have been wiped out, or at least 60% of them have been wiped out of the city. Only this is a lie. Through dice rolls, we actually determined that there was some sort of bribe going on, and, well, it wouldn't do the camera well to actually be told about this. But before we actually get into that, we have to do a bit of house cleaning, or rather housekeeping, if I remember how to English. First things first, we have to look at the Jihad rating, which we moved up to 2, because things are currently in Doris's control. So we're moving that up from 1 to 2, so rather than our chances on the Eternal Struggle table being taken off by 20, it's actually been taken off by 10, so fate's a bit more in our favour. There's also to do with the main game proper. As this is the beginning of a new session, I can remove the superficial willpower damage up to my composure or resolve, whichever is higher. Now, they're both free, so it doesn't really matter. As we used 2 willpower last time, or rather took 2 points of superficial willpower, I'm actually going to remove both of those right now. There you go. You can hear the noises just to clarify, because as much as I could turn this into like a web series, sort of like audio drama sort of thing, I'm not going to, because I want the people who listen to this to basically see what it's like to play this au natural, as it were. Anyway, diversions aside, there's also the matter of experience points. 5th edition, it awards a player 1 point of experience points per session, and I've never too been fond of that. Not because I'm a power gamer or anything, because I just think that's a tad too slow. So what I've done, I've adapted the V20 system, which basically you get 1 for showing up, 1 for progressing the story forward, and 1 for following some sort of plot device, or whatever the thing may be. So I awarded myself 3 EXP points, which takes up my total experience to 4. Why is it 4? Because when I was putting the character creation together, the character together in the character creation portion episode, which is you can go and listen to on your leisure if you haven't done already, I spent 34 of the 35 of the experience points to add stuff to the character, most of it which was spent on presents, which was used quite a bit in the previous session, so 1 plus 3 is 4. But yes, and I hadn't spent anything. I'm going to save that up, and hopefully something useful will come of that. But without further ado, we are on to the matter of Elysium. In the previous session, the roll I made, we had a scene in a different location, and I determined it was between the Seneschal James of Clan Nosferatu and the Prince James of Clan Malkavian, and there was a conflict of some sort that involved the sheriff, something that I determined through ad-libbing and conversation. And I'm going to determine now the sheriff's clan, because I'm feeling that the sheriff is going to come up at some point in this conversation, and I'm going to use the choosing the clan table, looking at the core clan books. Actually, no, I used that previously. I'm going to use all clans and bloodlines, and for which we are going to roll a d6 plus a d12. Okay, so that is a 9 and a 4, and I'm terrible with maths. That takes us up to a 13, and the 13 is a thin-blooded again. I'm not going to do that. A thin-blooded prince was stupid last time, but a thin-blooded sheriff is even more fucking bizarre. A 12 and a 3, that takes us up to 15. Tremere. Ooh, a Tremere sheriff. Ooh, I absolutely adore that. That puts a whole interesting spin on things. And because it's been a massive sausage fest so far of characters, I'm actually going to make the sheriff a female, a woman, she, her pronouns. And I'm going to call them Hannah. And we're basically going to determine the nature of this prince's speech, and basically the story that's being fabricated here. What the sheriff has done, what they didn't do. Just to describe the conflict a bit more, just to make it seem like a really heroic, virtuous thing. To do this, we're going to look at the scene type, activity, and focus tables. They're two separate D100 rolls. Waiting for the dice to settle. That is a 17. 17 is provoke. 97, nature. Well, the immediate thing that comes to my mind with provoke nature is that the Anarchs made an attack. They kicked the hornet's nest, essentially. That is the beginning of the conflict, so we're now going to roll that again to see if we can determine, I guess the middle point, the main portion of the... If this was a film, this is what happened. The intro, the Anarchs are pissing about. They've questioned our nature, our order things one time too many, and they've done something. But what is it that they've actually done? So we're going to roll again. That is 80. 80 is trust. 14, trust. Opposition. Trust opposition. It is something that the Anarchs have been playing for a while. There have been whispers and rumours that the Anarchs have been wanting to attack back, to clash horns with the Camarilla for some time. They've been playing like a revolt, or a war. They were going to... attack the prince. This is the first thing that's coming to mind. It's important to go with your gut instincts for some of this. They were going to launch an attack on the prince, and by doing so, it would eventually just cause the Camarilla to fall apart and crumble, potentially. And they were prepared for this. But how exactly did they prepare for this? So we're going to roll again. 95. Discipline. 25. Ooh, discipline equal. I think what my initial idea here, and this is probably where the negotiation, the Bryan bit from the previous session came in. All of this was beginning to happen, and there was a conversation between, I guess, the sheriff or the prince about this. That's where this begins to fall apart. And the prince gave them a choice. We can become equal, sort of thing. We can establish ourselves, join the right side, as it were. And obviously the Anarchs went, and then this is where the revolt happened. Now I'm just going to make one more roll to see how it was actually determined. How the outcome of this, the end to this prince's tale, as it were. That is 22. What's that? Assist. 99. Hostile. Assist. Hostile. Is that what it was? Yes, assist. Hostile. And I'm guessing this is obviously when everything just went up the wazoo. Actually, no. Obviously the fight that happened, the Anarchs said no. And things seemed tough. And the sheriff and their hounds came in at the right opportunity and wrapped things up in a nice neat bow. I think that's just clear enough for the elders to be satisfactory from that. But obviously this is not actually what happened. And we'll roll in a moment to see if Doris or anybody else inquires about this. But we're going back to the scene proper, as now I have to storytell this. Jonathan rises from his folded chair. after the announcement from James at the end of the previous session, hall falls silent. Even the prisoners begin to do a little bit. It's like you can occasionally hear the little wimble. There's some that's taking their prison time more well than the others, and God knows what this prince has been doing to these prisoners and these blood bottle dolls. And I can imagine Jonathan being quite well dressed, overly so for the conditions. It's cold, it's unpleasant, I won't say it's dank, but probably in the right time of the year in the winter. It is. If it's any colder than what it is currently, I'd imagine there'll be a bit of condensation in the air. My fellow subjects, thank you all ever so much for attending Elysium this most pleasant of evenings. And you may have heard whispers among the wind. Your little familioses or your ghouls may have picked up rumours of an attack made by our cousins in the Anarch movement, and there's probably some unpleasant disdain and grumbles, very hush, little whispers like, it's nothing out there. This isn't like someone shouting or anything. There's just like hushes and whispers. Well, I am here to report to you that such claims happen to be true. Indeed, the Anarchs did not only plan to attack and question our established order of things, but they intended to make moves against me. And I imagine the toreadors in the room was like, and like maybe a particular estranged one would just like to sort of collapse on the floor a little bit, and there's like someone fanning them down like this. It's all right. I fortunately was not harmed. Thank you so much for your concern. But I am fine. All is well. It's all thanks to our good sheriff, and the prince gestures towards the sheriff, for coming in and saving us at the good time. But the question is, how were the Anarchs able to question this? As you know, natures of the Anarchs have been quite tenuous, because really, we all want the same things. We just want peace, tranquility, to assert ourselves in this hospitable world as something that can live abide by the customs of man, woman, and supernatural. And I imagine there's some people that just sort of looking around a bit confused, maybe. Maybe there's some people who are just like patiently listening, but this is obviously a Malkavian who is just waffling gibberish. And to the prince could say whatever they want. It's like, yes, indeed, prince. So there was a conversation between themselves and I when they launched the attack in my domain, no less. The unruly creatures, and I gave them an opportunity to stand down and to join our members, to step away from their rebellious natures and essentially grow up, the childish creatures that they are, and there's some sniggers and there's some snorts. But alas, this was a ruse. This is when they chose that moment of opportunity to strike off and make a move against me. And as I said, if it wasn't for our sheriff and our dearest noble hounds and their amazing command over blood sorcery, I would not be standing here today as your prince. I doubt I would be standing here at all, to my most gracious of subjects. And through our sheriff's impressive techniques, there's a wicked smile implying some sinister methods, and there's like maybe a couple of it's like more gossip. It's like it's all very exciting. I'm curious. I don't think Doris has obviously been around quite the block a little bit, and probably not liking the nature of this torture, most sinful. Our sheriff was able to learn the location of the vast majority of them. They were holding what is known as a rand. A rand, can you believe that? It's nothing that compares to our noble Elysium. Obviously the prince, the irony here is that they're having Elysium in a jailhouse rather, a prison block. And all of their members were gathered, or rather most of their members were gathered. The sheriff and their hounds, and other volunteers of the night, were able to take most of them down. They did not suspect the attack that we made. We made the hunted. No, beg your pardon, we made the hunter. The hunted. And I can report for our James, our seneschal here, who is far better at arithmetic than I, that some 60% of the Anarch numbers have been quenched in our city. And there's some very polite, like, bravo, sort of like cheers, and it's like, that the polite applause, the hands pointing towards the scene. You know the sort of thing I'm getting to. So I wish to thank our esteemed sheriff and their prestigious hounds for their amazing work in their city. But of course, our work here is not done. There are still members of this unruly sect in our city, and furthermore, what they did that night and their baron, they must all be punished. And now I have to question, what is the nature of what the prince is going to do? Because obviously the prince is going to say, hey, get rid of them. But is there something more to this? And for this, we're going to make a couple more rolls. We're going to do the scene type, activities, and focus tables once more. Waiting for the D-ball to settle. That is 41. 41 is expose. That was the D100 ball collecting with other dice. 8. Expose friends. I think the printer's going to waffle on a little more. It is your esteemed duty as members of my court, members of the esteemed Ivory Tower, the true ruling faction of undead bloodsuckers of the night, to come together and defeat them. It is your duty for all of you to destroy the Anarchs in the city. Therefore, if you learn about any Anarch presence in the city, if a vampire reveals themselves to you as one of the so-called movements, and he sarcastically does the finger mark gesture here, then it will be my duty, your duty, and by extension my own, to destroy them. Any Anarch from this city will be removed immediately. I am calling a blood hunt on every single Anarch vampire in this city. We will have none of this rabble, this riffraff in my city, and if anyone dares sympathizes with them, that questions my decree, will be treated as an enemy of the Camarilla. And there's some more murmurs and gossips. This is quite a big thing. This is essentially a fucking brawl, and sort of like a free-for-all, like martial law against the Anarchs, which is pretty serious stuff. And then from that point onwards, I imagine the prince then begins to talk about other miscellaneous things, happenings without the city, this and that, and then the normal social stuff begins to occur. And I'm actually going to use this opportunity to roll onto a new scene. Nothing's really happened here. Obviously, Doris is just listening, and Bryan, those two was obviously, when we said previously in the last session that once Elysium was over, i.e. they have overstayed their welcome sort of thing, they would be heading back. But before we do that, and probably whilst this speech and general conversations is going on, we are going to roll on the random scene generation table, rolling a d12 to see if anything happens to shake up things a little bit. If not, we'll move straight over to the next scene, but if so, well, we'll see. That is a 10, and on a 10, ambiguous. Ambiguous. Now, obviously, the nature of the word ambiguous means it could be nothing, it could be everything. And I'm feeling that there's like a change in the air sort of thing. Doris is listening to this. Doris is not a creature of violence yet. And they're listening to this. The delusions, I guess, of this violence of this prince. And there's probably a chill within them. There's probably a tension up in the prisoners of this death and this slaughter. I can't see anything else changing beyond that. But what does Bryan think about this? Would Bryan be opposed to this sort of violence? I'd say that it's 50-50. If it's higher than 50 to 59, if it's higher than 59, beg your pardon, I'd say that Bryan would want to go on a bit of killing. If not, we'll just keep that in mind. But of course, we're not looking to 50 to 59, we're actually looking to 40 to 49, because remember, the jihad rating lowers it by 10, so things are not necessarily in our favour. 55, which is obviously higher than that amount. And I imagine that Doris is turning towards Bryan. He's got a bit this nod on his face and say, "You don't seriously want to partake in such onslaught?" "Yeah, why not? After all, look at me." "No, we are stepping away from such pure savagery. I thought you wanted to get better." "Yeah, but in my youth, I was a boxer. A bit of a fighter, and it's not every day that you get to go and take out the trash, as it were." True, I suppose, but our priority here, as promised by you, young man, is that I'm going to show you to some of my friends and superiors. Now, unless there's any other business that you wish to attend to this evening, I'd appreciate it if we could leave. Is there any business that Bryan wishes to do here? Because when we found him, he was just standing in the corner, just minding his business. Again, I have no idea. We don't know anything about Bryan other than the fact that he's now a boxer. So he's the fighting sort. So I'm going to say, again, 50-50 if there's other business that Bryan has to do, which obviously is 40 to 49, 49 higher. We'll say that he doesn't have any business left to do. If it's below that, there is something that he needs to get up to. 73, so... alright, so... You're going to lead us the way then, or we're just going to stand here looking gormless as our fucking superiors and our elders are going to be talking about, gossiping about this, that and the other. I think that's the most brilliant idea you had all evening. Sort of pats him on the shoulder. You always is patronising. Well, only those who deserve it. Ah! And the two waddle out. They're talking amongst themselves. And, you know, the whole conversation's going on and they wander back and Doris turns back to... Do you have your own car? No, I came through the sewers. I have to change. And he picks up a bag that they both probably had to leave, like, in the prison. So when you're meeting people, you probably have to leave your belongings somewhere. And I imagine they're walking past, they take a diversion, they pick something up and said, unless you want to do the whole Mask with 1,000 Faces stuff, you want to head out this way. Well, my car is over there. Well, we can get that way if we just go through here. So just, it's not entirely legal, obviously, but just keep your mouth shut and follow me. All right, okay. And so they're minding through, like, bits that you don't usually through corridors and things. It's probably some late night wanders like asleep or just mind their business. They go through fire escapes and things, and it leads back onto the car park. And now we properly move over to a new scene. And again, I'm not going to affect the Jihad rating at all, because I knew that I rolled for it recently, but I wanted to see if there's going to be like a change in Elysium, because I said it's all going very too well, and I wasn't too sure how to progress other than just leaving. I wanted to provide some potential spice, but alas, nothing really happened, just a change in how Doris is feeling, like a chill in the air sort of thing. But we are actually probably moving over to a different scene. And again, as nothing really happened and nothing's really been taken away, Doris isn't going to go out of their way to take out Anarchs, but we know Bryan will. So if there's going to be some Anarchs that they stop upon, they're obviously going to get into a bit of a pickle. But we are actually properly moving on to a new scene because Doris knows where to go back to wherever, which we'll determine later. But now, as we're going on to a new scene, we do have to roll a random scene generation table result. 7, and that is Closed Desire. Closed Desire for Doris would mean atone for your sins. Now, we don't know what those sins are. We haven't actually determined what the sins are. And it might seem a bit weird to close it here. So we might just step away or move away from it from the time being, which would actually make sense given the whole nature of this. But we're going to see what those sins were. And to do that, we're going to roll again with the activity and the focus tables to see if we can get a firmer understanding of what's happening here. The horrible things that Doris did or did not do. 61. That would be order. 1. I rolled the wrong table, so I did focus first. Order first, beg your pardon. Order first. So 1 on the activity table is achievement. Achievement and order. Achievement and order. Well, we know that Doris is particularly a religious person. The first thing that comes to mind, and this is particularly cruel, Doris struck somebody. There's somebody in the church. I'm beginning that they taught children. They did something at like a Sunday school or something. Yeah. And this child spoke out of turn, and Doris is quite old. And again, this was the 1940s when Doris was embraced. So it was perfectly acceptable to hit children, and during this time you could get away with beating your house mistress, your wife, providing the stick you used to do so was no wider than your thumb. That was an actual thing that happened in the UK. Fun times. Equal rights? Never heard of them, but that's obviously very horrible. And I think this is what Doris did. I think that Doris sort of taught like some sort of Sunday school, because we know that there was some sort, as I said, religious and teaching stuff involved. So I reckon they taught it like a fucking Sunday school or something. And this kid was mucking about, and Doris hit someone, like fucking caned a kid or something. Maybe did something a bit too far. Maybe it's the first time they had to do something, because Doris is usually very sweet and, you know, kids are well behaved, and Dog just gave whack, fucking beat the fucking shit. Then the embrace happened shortly afterwards. And in relation to what we've been given here, maybe Doris is questioning their nature of things. Maybe Doris is in with this fellow Nosferatu, who's kind of the flip side of her. She's thinking about that, and just maybe that if we're going to run into Anarchs and there's going to be a fight, that maybe she's going to have to put that aside for a potential moment. And just, I mean, these Anarchs had it, they're creating so much danger and harm for every other vampire here. They're ruining the order of things, you know? She's probably been raised and believes that they are the reason that the Second Inquisition have come along. You know, all sorts of different things could happen. And you've got Bryan here, they're probably driving away in the camper van, and Bryan has made some sort of comment about this and that, how it smells or whatever. And Doris is sitting and brewing and thinking about the nature of the city, and this is obviously going to go to ruin. Oh, that is dark. That is something to keep in mind, that maybe Doris is maybe is not going to be as hesitant as before to get into a fight. Very mixed feelings here. This potentially could be Doris's downfall. Fantastic, I love it. And you know what? This all came out, this bit of backstory has just come about with 3 very interesting dice rolls, defining a scene and these scene definers. I absolutely love it. So the 2 are driving away. Again, I imagine things to be quite peaceful, given the time of night that we're in. It's the middle of the night. And we're going to roll on those 2 tables once more to see if we can use that to work out the nature of where this cult is hiding. You know, they're situated in themselves. Because I said that Doris hasn't been in the city for very long. At least I think I said that. So I imagine that they moved with the cult, and there probably isn't like many members there. So anyway, I'm going to roll on this scene type tables to see if we can get anything. 83 is help. 60 help randomness. I'm thinking of help the shelter. That's the first thing that comes to mind, because randomness, because different people who are homeless like come and go constantly. And it makes sense for the Nosferatu to hide amongst beggars and the poor who don't look particularly fantastic anyway. Stereotypically speaking, you know, that the hygiene isn't the highest priority at the moment. Some of them may have not shaved very long. That makes perfect sense for Nosferatu to hide amongst, basically, to be quite horrible about it, the closest thing towards them in terms of humanity. That's their current goal, and they're hiding in a homeless shelter. These Cleopatrians have a homeless centre as their main port of call. I imagine this being a homeless centre would be in the town centre, or the city centre rather, so there isn't actually that much driving involved. But before we get to that, I just want to see, again, if there's, as we arrive to the homeless centre, you know, this is all part of the same scene, is there going to be anything that's going to get in our way? Or when we arrive through there, you know, we open the doors, what we will find. So first I'm going to roll the scene definer table. 12. Something negative happens to an NPC. Something negative happens to an NPC. Now, there's a few that's written on my list here. I'm on a separate piece of paper, I've written down currently 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 NPCs. We have the Grandson Touchstone, we have the Prince, the Seneschal, Bryan, the Sire Heather, the Toreador Coterie member, Steve, which is a tech contact of Doris, this enemy of Doris who we haven't named yet or even given much backstory to other than the friend of Heather's, and of course the Sheriff. As there's 9 of them, I'm just going to take a D10 and I'm going to roll that to see which one of those it lands on. And if it's obviously not going to be... If it lands on a 10, we'll roll again. That is a 3. The Seneschal James. What happens to him? I mean, we know he's a Nosferatu. Well, rather than sitting here and pondering, I'm going to roll the scene type activity and focus tables. 100. Information. Oh, that's on the focus table. Rolled the wrong one. So focus is 100. And for activity... 66. Getting a lot of 60s. Hold information. And how can that be tied to... It's interesting given the fact that they were at Elysium. The first thing that comes to mind is that we were followed and we opened the thing. They opened the doors. Bryan is probably the first one to get it because, you know, he looks at his homeless, he passes comms like, you lot holding here was expecting like a church or something. You'll totally understand when we get inside, but please just get out. Please, don't want to keep them waiting. They're expecting us. No, they're just... You'll see, it's busy. Obviously, feeding and caring for the homeless. So he hops out, and then as Doris is like carefully getting out, they see that Bryan whizzes off immediately. Doris, in their old way, hops out and sees that Bryan is attacking the Seneschal. And as they're holding information, I guess, obviously there's some sort of beef going on. And Bryan grabs the Seneschal and just throws him against the wall. What are you doing following us? I thought we closed the matter immediately. Alright, what on earth is going on here? Oh, for goodness sake, please! This is no place for the sort of violence, especially with the way that we are dressed like this! Does Doris manage to break up the fight? I'm going to roll Charisma and Persuasion. There's the first vampire-related roll of the thing. So that's 5 dice, because Charisma is 4. Actually, no, it's 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2 of them are hunger die, because our hunger is at 2. Let's see, we've got 1 success, 2, 3, 4. I would say that's a substantial amount to like at least get them to listen. Bryan, please! And she's like pushes him away with a shoulder and he loosens his grip. Nah, alright, I won't fucking crack his fucking jaw in. But you tell me, mate, what you're following us for. Let me go, boss. I'll tell you. Right, just let me go. So, what is going on here? Because this is rather unusual. So again, the 100 time. 86, I was reading that upside down. 86 is care. 74, freedom. Ooh, does the Seneschal know about this place? Now, I did in my little improv in the roleplay a moment ago that Bryan was going like, thought we called it off. Like the agreement or whatever. I got it. This is fucking adorable. Bryan is talking at night in, secret terms here. These two are a couple. These two are smacking cheeks in the sewers in the late night hours. The Seneschal is obviously... Bryan has dumped the Seneschal, and obviously that's the thing that I'm getting here. Caring, obviously, there's still the strong feelings there. Look, Bryan, I'm just worried about you. James, we're through. I'm a free man. We're different people. Look, I respect you for your recent promotion in Seneschal, alright? Please. Give me some space, man. Please. He sort of nods. Just... But with them? How dare you? And she probably goes to slam him. Bryan just catches the wrist like, please excuse her, she's a bit eccentric. I can see that, boss. What is this place? It's a homeless shelter. Why you brought him here of all places? Now, Doris is obviously going to lie here. Or will they? Will Doris lie? I think that is likely. I don't think that they would want the Seneschal to know about the nature of their cause yet. Probably the wrong time, the wrong place, this sort of thing. So we're going to say this is highly unlikely. So this is 80 to 89. If it's 89 or less, then Doris is going to lie. But if it's higher than that, Doris will, wants to speak the truth. But obviously we're not looking for that. We're looking for 70 to 79 or less. 14. So yes, Doris isn't going to say anything, so there's going to be some lying here. Brian here just needed somebody to talk to about this. And I brought him here. Just somewhere quiet. Unexpected, where he wouldn't be stalked by his weird, creepy ex. Actually, I'm not going to do a D100 roll for that. I'm going to do manipulation and subterfuge. So that is 5 dice this time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do I have a specialty for that? No, I do not. And I'm not going to arouse the blood here for this, because I think that's unnecessary. So I'll roll Doris's rolls first. Then we'll get the Seneschal to roll. So 1, 2... I could take some superficial willpower damage to re-roll the 1. I'm gonna have to. So that's now 3 successes. So I'm gonna mark that off. Bit of willpower. Did I determine in the previous fiend if the Seneschal was the power level of the Seneschal? No, I did not. So I'm going to do that now by rolling a d6 once I've cleared the runway a bit. I mean, I'm suspecting being the Seneschal and knowing Bryan quite well, is either similar or slightly weaker, because I'm guessing the 3 of them, between them, are various ages of Ancillor. But you know what? Looks can be deceiving. So we're going to roll a d6 on the power level table. A 4, which is slightly stronger. This isn't looking good for Doris, because now I have an example of either 3 or 5 dice, and I'm going to roll the 5 dice here, because that's the same, that puts it, in this instance, on an equal footing. So there we go. That's, again, clearing the wrong way. That's 5 dice. It has to be 3. 1, 2... It's 2 successes. What's the example? Willpower, which he's going to have to roll. I feel to beat this example willpower 5. Yeah, that's plenty. I'll just mark that off. Re-roll 3 normal die. And 4 successes of a margin of 1. So it's not enough, I feel, for Seneschal to push on. But they can see that Doris isn't being entirely truthful. To have this conversation here is a bit weird, but I don't think there's enough for him to work out or to pry further. That there's something not quite right with it. But the question is, will he push? I think it is likely. Actually, no. From what I just said, I think it's possible that he might inquire further. So looking at the internal struggle, possible is 40 to 49, but obviously we're looking to 1339. If it's that or below, he will pry further. If not, then he will just begrudgingly let it go for the time being. That is 69, which is a nice result for us. So he knows that something's not up, but he knows that this is not the right time or place, because Bryan is obviously... He's raring to go. He's pissed off. He knows about the whole box. I mean, he would have to know. He would have to know. He's sort of looking. He's not one... Again, he's a political man. He's done something. He's fucked up, basically, just stalking him like this. He's the Seneschal. He's the prince's right hand. It's like, all right, Bryan. But you would, at the very least, tell me if something was wrong. None of your fucking business. I should have your fucking jaw for this. What a good mate Princey here finds out what you've done. Please don't say anything to Jonathan. My emotions got the better of me. It's just, you owe me one. You owe us one, actually. You owe us a bone. We'll keep our mouth shut, won't we, Doris? Will Doris keep their mouth shut? I would say with the religious background, again, for the characterization process and thinking what Doris would do here, I think Doris, I say it's highly likely that, the confessional booth, atoning for your sins sort of thing, I reckon Doris has done that in more than one setting. Not in an official sense, but I reckon that Doris has, been an open ear for many a person that she cared for. Probably not so much when she fucking caned the kid and probably lost it. Not that it was anything, I guess, wrong, in quotation marks, for the time of the 1940s. I do not stand for that shit now. I condone the beating of kids. That shit's just wrong. Anyway, highly likely, again, we're not looking for 89 or lower. We're looking for 79 or lower. That is 70 exactly. So Doris will keep their mouth shut. You have my word. that from God before us, that, I won't say anything, just please let us do what we need to do, and you can sort yourself out, good man. Come on, Bryan, we have much to be getting on with. All right, Doris. I'll see you later, Bryan. Yeah. And so they wander in. But the question is, with the various homeless individuals about, do these individuals need to use Mask of 1,000 Faces or some level of obfuscation to go about? I would have thought not, given this is essentially their base of operations and where they're going to be initiating new individuals. So I say that it is, I say it's unlikely that this is the case. There's probably many a Nosferatu who has the homeless who as ghouls to find information for this and that sort of thing. And they're feeding the homeless, they're giving them food. They may not be giving them all the help that they need, but they're giving them some place warm to stay. So I think it is unlikely that the homeless that frequent here are phased by the not. Maybe they are phased, but they just, they're safe. They won't say a word. So we are looking at unlikely. Not 39 or less. We're doing 29 or less. So yeah, let's find out. 24. So there is no need for them to obfuscate themselves, and Doris can face this. Oh, you don't need to worry about any of those sorts of powers. They can be trusted. Who? The homeless. Silly. And pushes open the doors and sort of wandering in, and sort of like this community centre sort of thing. I imagine, like open spaces, nothing too impressive, some tables and to eat. There's a kitchen where various homeless like to help out and whatnot, and volunteers. And amongst them all, there would be some other Nosferatu who turn and look. And given the description of what we're told in Cult of the Blood Gods, they are Cleopatrans of the highest regard, meaning that they are Nosferatus who don't like what they are. So they try and appear as human as possible, not wanting to blend in with a mortal society of different, like some of them wearing high dresses, like fashionable dresses and whatnot, but when they're doing the whole cult stuff, they're like robes. And I imagine that whoever in charge here would be wearing some sort of robe. And we're going to go to Sister Patricia, which is the name that I just came up with right now, who would notice these two and would approach Bryan and Doris and just goes up to them and said, "Good evening, Doris. Good evening, Doris. And I see that you have brought a new member to join our little family." "Yes, Sister Patricia." And she sort of like bows, like maybe even putting her hands together and bowing. Maybe not necessarily for something that she has to do for the cult, but this is like a higher, holier figure sort of thing. So again, the religious thing, she'll probably just do that instinctively. "This is Bryan, who we found at Elysium earlier tonight." "Elysium, she says. "Yeah. The prince wanted to speak to us, something to do with the Anarchs. The Anarchs have been causing a bit of trouble. Put a fucking blood hunt on all of them." "A blood hunt on all the Anarchs? This is most curious, Doris." "It is indeed, and I am not one for the violence, but as you can see, we have some muscle with us now." "Yes, indeed. So," and I imagine Patricia begins to pace around them, like checking out Bryan, just sort of looking them up and down a little bit. And I see Patricia as much paler than our two Nosferatu here, and maybe like a chalk white. "So, you want to join our esteemed family, Cleopatrians of Yima?" "Yeah, I'll be honest, I wasn't convinced at first, but Doris here, she's got away with words. Hasn't she just? So why do you wish to join us?" "Well, as I said, Doris has got away with words, and I haven't met too many people who are as patient as Doris. There are some of us, are angry, and they're just really... Myself, I box, I take my anger out, but I haven't found anybody who claims to be a way to be changing. And you know what, if you don't mind me asking, if this is so much the case that this blood of this Yima fella can help us out, how come there aren't many of us here?" "'Cause our fellow brothers and sisters haven't had their eyes opened and enlightened to our ways. And if you are serious about this, you will devote yourself fully to our cause. Doris here attends Elysia. She is our eyes and ears for us. not formally one of the Out Club, so to speak. And you, apparently be the muscle, you can probably put others down in their place should they challenge us. If you get what I'm meaning. I'll help the cause however I can if you're absolutely certain that there is hope that we can actually look good in a suit for a change. Oh, there is hope. For I have visions. Many of us come here for visions. Dreams of Rima himself, or herself, and he gestures to some Nosferatu rocking in the corner, as some may imply, that through their blood, we can be cured. So, come with me. You too, Doris, can oversee the initiation. And what does the initiation happen here? What actually happens here? Because Cults of the Blood Gods doesn't present much on the Cleopatrans of Yima. They are essentially Cleopatras that get dreams of the Methuselah Yima. There isn't anything to do with the initiation process, and each cult faction across the world, especially of this nature, would deal with it differently. So we're going to use the Sing type activity and focus table to again determine how this cult ritual initiation process comes to place, how it happens. What does Bryan need to do? And we have 42, the meaning of life and everything, very appropriate here. Barter. That's an unusual one. 45. Illness. Barter illness. I see this as a conversation, like some words that are exchanged there. Britisha and Bryan, they are conversing. They're having to acknowledge that the Nosferatu condition in this instance is a plague, an illness, and having to convince Bryan that this is an illness that can be saved, that regardless of what you've been told, and this is, it's still quite difficult for Bryan to get a hold of here. In this, the talking and the conversation, and I'm not going to do any dice rolls with this because these are NPCs. It really doesn't need to happen. But what I will do with these conversations, Britisha is going, do you acknowledge, are you willing to trade everything that you have in order to rid yourself of this plague? Are you willing to make the sacrifices necessary to become one among the flock once more? Are you willing to acknowledge that the way of the Nosferatu is not only a sin, but a vile, dirty illness? I say it is possible, because through what Bryan was saying earlier on, I'm not entirely convinced that they're wholly convinced. So I say it's possible. So 39 or less will say that Bryan has taken on board. And obviously it's not, and I'm saying it's 39 or less because possible is 49 or less, but with the Jihad rating intact, I'm saying it's 39 or less, which is 10 below. Waiting for the dice to settle. What is that? That is 18. Bryan is sort of like nodding. I'd say that the difference between those numbers, this isn't like a ruling in the homebrew. This is just me thinking about it. Like those difference in how low down that is. He's eager. He's convinced. Priscilla has worded her magic, as it were, her vocal magic upon that, and then this ritual can take place. And I imagine that Priscilla probably has made some sort of claim that they are connected to Yima in some fashion. As Nosferatus go, they may not be as attractive, or maybe it's because they're so far down the lineage that it hasn't manifested themselves there, but it's growing and strong and fighting against the illness and researching, studying all this occult stuff and caring amongst what they aspire to, mortals, the weak and the homeless, on a similar playing field of them. There is an initiation, a drinking of the passing of the blood. I imagine them, as Doris is involved with this ritual as well, that they're... I won't call this like a blood bomb, but this some sort of chalice. Patricia's cut down their arm and pour blood into this chalice, which, given where they are, is probably more like a fucking saucepan or something. It would be stainless steel. It would be clean. It wouldn't have any impurities, as it were, from the homeless or other vampires. Priscilla orders Bryan to do the same. Bryan does this also. And Doris, I'd say, as they're overseeing this, they would do the same. And because we're losing blood here, we are going to increase our hunger up to 3. And now the beast is beginning to stir and snarl and pull at the rib cages.
Why do you play such games, you worthless creature? Look at them. You are greater than that. I know deep down inside you enjoy beating that kid. Go on, take the pan, take the implements, use your weapons of destruction and beat them, crush them, pulverize them, destroy them.
No, this is the way. This is the way to our salvation. And fills her blood into this. Priscilla puts the pan in the middle of the 3, and I imagine there are other members of the cult who are gathered round and they're watching this. Priscilla orders them to speak the sacred words, probably some Latin or some probably scriptures of the Book of Nod or some teachings of the Nosferatu, or this particular breed of Nosferatu. And Priscilla acts upon these ancient words. Doris also, and I think at this point I'm going to make an intelligence and no, actually I'm going to make a charisma and a cult roll. Unusual because there's like some chanting, some praying, so that's quite a huge dice pool. That's 9 dice for Doris because there's 4 charisma, there is the 3 for cult, plus the cult enigma specialty that I put, which adds another dice, so that is 9 dice in total. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 3 hunger dice now. Hold on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. For a second I thought I had 10. Okay. I love the sound of a huge dice pool. Let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going just to increase the chances of making this sort of ritual work better, this whole initiation process, which is essentially this is essentially some form of Valdery, but if we're going to make this to Sabbat terms, but this is going to bind Bryan to this interpretation of the cult more. So I'm going to take a point of superficial willpower, he says, looking for his pencil. I'm going to roll 3 regular die. That's much better. That takes us up to 6 successes. 4 in my head was like a good amount, but Doris really wants this to work. So does Priscilla. They chant the magic words and they offer their blood to Bryan, who drinks a bit. Doris, who drinks a bit. Priscilla, that drinks a bit more. And I won't say that this is enough to... Actually, I'm debating, actually, is this the amount that she drinks? Is this enough to basically remove the hunger that we just took? And I'm not sure, actually. And rather than scan through the book to remember how the blood works in this instance, I'm basically just going to overrule this and say it's possible, using the Eternal Struggle table. Possible, 49 or less, but obviously this is 39 or less. What is that? That is 69, which isn't very nice. So the amount that Doris was left to drink, so I imagine Bryan would have been first, then Priscilla, and then the little scraps that was left over for Priscilla. And I imagine that Priscilla at their hunger level, you know, this is rich, it's intoxicating, this is like fucking crack on sugar, or sugar on crack, you can choose. Leave in the comments below. There are more ancient scriptures, and Bryan is probably in this state of euphoria with this chanting, just really in the moment more than anything else, and kind of like this blood bond, Volordery sort of vein, feels more enthusiastic that they've been given more of a grander life purpose. He feels happy, he feels ecstatic that he has found his home amongst the Cleopatrans of Yima. Priscilla smiles and nods, you know, does the whole, thank you ever so much, Doris, for your help, and dearest Bryan, welcome to your new home amongst the Cleopatrans of Yima, and bows rather regally, respectfully, nobly, and Doris couldn't been any happier. And I think Doris at this point would be offered to sing. There might be some weird song that they've done here, And, yeah, there'll be some sort of celebrations into the night. But what happens next? Well, we're going to have to find out next time, because this seems like a very sensible place to end the session. I'm absolutely adoring this. This has been so much fun, really working towards the cult nature of this. And I hope you are too. Now, obviously, the whole political nature of vampires is a bit skewed somewhat, because, this is just the one person playing. We've also got the whole Anarch stuff to deal with. Bryan is part of the cult now, and Bryan is going to be working their way up. And I imagine that, somebody is going to have to show Bryan the way of things. Show them the way. The sort of thing to resurrect a dated and somewhat offensive meme. But, yes, I'm really excited. And there's also James. This weird love triangle thing going... Not love triangle. Well, it kind of is a love triangle now, because Bryan, the cult. What does James think of all of this? Does he worry about Doris? Does he inquire further more about this place? Is the cult in danger? Doris actually make a point of saying that we were followed here by the Seneschal. So many questions left unanswered, and we're just going to have to find out what happens next time in this next episode of Playing With Diceself, using the Autarkis Storyteller homebrew, the Vampire Masquerade 5th Edition that I made. And when's that coming out? Well, you're just going to have to tune about to find out. And until next time, farewell.